Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it finds you well. My name is John. I am an author, and I thank you for joining me on what I'm calling the next, what I'm calling on the next of my Talking Tuesday videos, where I talk about some of my interests and influences. And I'm gonna move on to the next big sort of chronologically nerd love. I started off with my love of fantasy, particularly Tolkien. I do need to make a video delving more into why I love Tolkien so much in the future. Last week I did Star Trek, and coming up here is my discussion of another of my big nerd loves, which is the British science fiction show Doctor Who. I would say probably now, especially as an adult, and I think this changed over sometime when I was a teenager. I would say that Doctor Who is probably my favorite television show. Um, I'm not sure why. I know it's true, but I'm not sure I could give you or outline a particular reason why it's narrowly narrowly beats Star Trek in its various iterations for me. Um, yeah, doesn't really matter, but I was first introduced to Doctor Who. I think this is sort of one of those sort of weird memories that it's just a little jumbled, might be partly made up, to be perfectly honest. But I love. I found one time when I was staying over at my grandparents' house watching an old TV in the room they were in. I ended up watching on PBS because when I was growing up in the '90s, that PBS usually at like 11 p.m. on a Saturday is about the only time Doctor Who was ever on in the United States. Um, but I ended up watching an episode. In my brain, I maintain that it was a. What appears in my brain is that it was a colorized version of the second Doctor story, Tomb of the Cybermen. Um, Although in hindsight, there is no such colorized version of Tomb of the Cybermen. It was a black and white episode, and it's never been and doesn't need to be colorized really. And I have it on several reliable witnesses. The TV I was watching it in itself was a very old TV in black and white. So even if it was a colorized version, which doesn't exist, there was no way I would have been seeing it in color. But that's what it feels like in my memory. In hindsight, it's quite possible, although again, it doesn't explain the non-colored TV. It might have been the later Sixth Doctor episode, Attack of the Cybermen, which at least partly features on the same planet and the same eponymous tombs. But on describing this in excitement to my dad, he realized I was talking about whatever I was watching. Realized I was talking about Doctor Who, and would start recording the episodes. Sometimes, not always, depends on what the episodes were, because the Doctor Who could get surprisingly violent for a show that was at least ostensibly aimed at kids and families, but would at least sometimes, record the episodes on VHS. Another sentence that makes me feel a little bit old. Um, One of the and as I got a little bit older, being allowed on Saturday nights to stay up late enough to watch it as it came on PBS. Um, and that's another one that I just started, just like with Star Trek, started you know buying on VHS tapes when when I had some allowance or spending money and we went to the mall. I go into the VHS store and sometimes buy an episode of Star Trek, sometimes buy a story of Doctor Who. Um, some of the ones I remember most clearly are some of the Fourth Doctor classics like the Pyramids of Mars, Ark in Space. I remember very clearly and buying at that time. And then once it was one of the first things I started buying once, because by that point it was a little bit easier for various reasons to find Star Trek on like TV or the very early days of streaming. But I started buying DVDs of Doctor Who, of the classic Doctor Who episodes, and then when was in college, the the relaunch or the new Who or whatever you want to call it. I like new Who personally. Came out, and I found various ways of watching that at the time on the internet. Probably not entirely smart or legal. Probably lucky I didn't end up with a major computer virus trying to find those early episodes. And then it started becoming available on, like, it was BBC America and then Prime Video, and for watching that, and I started buying them on Prime Video, and now they're available on Disney Plus in the ever changing, shifting landscape. But just I really love the someone a lot smarter than me. Phrased it as that they're very much, a lot of the structure of Doctor Who has ended up being, sort of patterned off of fairy tales, sort of a fantasy element of, you know, good versus evil with this, it's, the bad guys are overcome not by, you know, not by strength or violence usually, but by, cleverness or turning their own traps against them. And it's just a really good, it's just a great story, and just a great, I mean, just the number of things that just went so well. I mean, for a show that started off in 1963, you know, as primarily a kids show where science fiction was used to tell and teach lessons of either science or history, with the time travel aspect just a way of transitioning between the stories, and sort of the doctor, the mysterious doctor, as the mode of transportation and kind of deus ex machina to get them out of trouble at the end, and how that slowly evolved into, the doctor's the one who fights the monsters and the bad guys, and, goes around helping out and solving problems wherever he can. And just the slow evolution of the show. I just adore it. I've never gotten tired of it. I've watched all of New Who multiple times at this point, many times, to the point where I have often surprised friends that are getting into the show by walking in on them watching it, and within 5 seconds being able to tell exactly what episode they're watching. I've seen the vast majority. I think there's, not counting the episodes that are completely missing. Like, I've seen the vast majority of the original 26 seasons of Doctor Who that still exists. There's one or two that I've just, for one reason or another, difficulty acquiring in the United States. That they were not released yet on DVD when I stopped collecting DVDs, because who collects DVDs really anymore? Um, and I'd love to watch, and I was even like really into watching like a lot of the behind the scenes, how they made the stories, and that's one of the areas that really, I think, has impacted sort of my writing and my thoughts and my view of the world. Is both those stories, those sort of fairy tale structure, um, and just the sort of, the kindness and the trying to help that just pervades those stories. And it's such a, the premise of like this time traveler goes around, you know ends up, not often where he wants to be, but where he needs to be to, help people out, and his incredible compassion and kindness. I mean, it's just such a great message, but also leads to such flexibility. I mean, there's the fairy tale aspect. Some episodes are just about fantasy. Some episodes are, there's some really, really like excellent hard sci-fi episodes, with good socio-political commentary and just really, really intelligent, scripts or presentations of messages and ideas. There's horror episodes. Again, one thing that's odd about the show that's always been sort of geared toward family is it really can be, pretty tense and scary and even quite violent. The show has very rarely with like blood and bullets and any kind of that type of graphic sense, but quite frequently there is quite a death toll by the end of episodes. especially in the both in the classic and in the modern series. Um, this is another thing that I'd love to do, and I probably will do more videos in the future where I sort of break down the individual doctors and seasons a little bit more. Um, I I will say I don't dislike any of the doctors we've had. I think they've all been great and brought something to the role. Um, any sort of deficiencies in their sort of the just like with Star Trek, everything has its good points and bad points. I could outline each of the doctors and each of the showrunner, creative writer, producer combinations, what have you, that have run the show. I could highlight good points and bad points, but pretty much all of the issues with any of the doctors that I've ever run across are really more down to the writing and how the stories are being told. They've all been great. I'm really, really excited to see what the for the new and sometime in May. I don't think they've announced the date, but the new season with the 15th Doctor Judy Gatwa. Um, I'd say my I do with anything else have a favorite. Probably my favorite Doctor all time is probably still the Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker from Classic Who. I'm just the life and personality he brought to the role. And they're just, I mean, it's also benefited as well from they're just overall the production of his in his 7 years run pretty consistently excellent. There's just some great scripts, even some of the weaker episodes. And there are a few that just don't work, and there are also a few, as with any classic TV shows, that are just about unwatchable, or at least very uncomfortable to watch because of the sexism and or racism of the time. But a lot of his have aged pretty well. I'd say probably my second favorite Doctor and my favorite of the new Who Doctors is Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. Just same thing. I love the life and character and personality he brought to the story. And yeah, I could talk about Doctor Who for a long time. Again, it's been my favorite show for 20 odd years now, and is something I still adore. But I will stop rambling now. That's just sort of a brief gutching of how I came to know and love Doctor Who and what I love about it, and just sort of some of the storytelling ideas that have come with that. If you have any suggestions on other things you'd like me to talk about, or you have your own thoughts on Doctor Who, what you love, don't love, you know, what have you about that, feel free to share them. I would love to talk about that more in the comments, or if you have suggestions in more specific videos I could do talking about specific doctors or seasons, etc., for Doctor Who, feel free to share those. I'm going to do my usual end with a little some plugging. I have two books available on Amazon. We have The Shadow of the Past, as well as And the Sun Burned Red. Both of them are available on Amazon and linked below, as are linked below all of my socials and my personal blog and website. I promise I will update the blog at some point soon. Um, Otherwise, yeah, comments, please. I'd love you to like, share, subscribe, get notifications, what have you. Anything like that is sincerely appreciated. Um, I hope you all have a fantastic day and that you have the opportunity to watch or read or do something you love as well as do something creative. Catch you on the next one.